Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back for day 2 of the 2021 World Cocoa Foundation Partnership Meeting. I'm your host for these 2 days, Dr. Christy Leslie. I wanted to say, as an independent scholar who works most often with cocoa farmers in West Africa, I've really appreciated the opportunity to connect with so many of my colleagues and friends across the cocoa sector at this partnership meeting. It's been wonderful to connect with so many of you via direct message and, of course, at the breakouts and here on the plenary. I want to extend our apologies again for the slight technical difficulties from yesterday during the opening plenary. And as a reminder, the recording of the full plenary speeches will soon be available on our event platform. We have another exciting program in store for you today for day 2. But first, let me offer just a few reminders about using our event platform. Pour rappel, pour accéder à cette session en français,
I just want to remind you that to access this session in French, you can click on the left, the language of your choice.
Without the generous support of our sponsors, notably gold sponsor Mondelez. Be sure to stop by the sponsor pages to learn more about each of them. I'm sure you want to meet with other attendees again on the second day of our program. As a reminder, to meet up with others, go to the Attendees tab so that you can connect, send direct messages, and even schedule and hold one-to-one video meetings. Please, of course, let everybody in your network know that you're at the partnership meeting in your social media posts by using the hashtag WCFPM and tagging @WorldCocoa on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Now to our agenda for this opening plenary of day 2. We'll get started right away with Christine McGrath, Chief Sustainability, Wellbeing, Public and Government Affairs Officer at Mondelez International.
On a de nombreux défis. Les défis auxquels on est confronté.
The challenges that we face are especially the problem of the land. The land is tired. The interpreter does not have sound.
Deuxième défi qui est
the second challenge, which is the problem of climate change, right? We can't really control the rain and when it's going to rain.
అడవులు ఉంటే అన్ని జంతువులు కానీ అన్నిటికీ బాగుంటుంది. పెట్టలు చెట్లు అన్ని రకాలు అన్నీ బతుకుతాయి. అడవి లేదనుకోండి ఏమి ఉండవో, ఇటు వాతావరణం కూడా వేడి ఎక్కువైపోయి పంటలు కూడా దెబ్బతింటాయి.
It is true that cocoa, we have difficulties with work. We have also the work with problems with work with employees. Today, we don't have the youth help us work. All the young people go to the city to look for jobs there. The interpreter does not have sound again.
Porém, se a gente tivesse essa facilidade na questão do que eu te falei, de poder fazer um financiamento, colocar água, irrigar, eu acredito que o cenário aqui estaria outra, porque teve outras pessoas que é do mesmo tempo nosso e que a plantação dele está excelente.
At Mondelez International, we believe that a positive future for cocoa starts with empowered cocoa communities. That's why we wanted to share with you the voices of the farmers that grow our cocoa and the challenges they are tackling. As one of the world's largest cocoa buyers, we're using our scale to drive meaningful impact and lasting change. This means addressing climate change, deforestation, gender inequality, poverty, and child labor head-on. We cannot shy away from these issues, and we cannot address them in isolation. We need to tackle the root causes holistically and together so that our solutions don't address one problem while inadvertently creating another. We've already made significant progress as a sector, but there is plenty of work we need to do collectively to create a sustainable future for cocoa and the farmers and communities who grow it. And we can only do this if we all keep sharing our learnings along the way. To create a positive future for cocoa, cocoa farmers and their communities need to remain at the heart of what we all do. It is critical that we continuously listen to them in order to understand their needs and work together as a sector to help them build their capacity and drive their own development. It is only by being present, working on the ground with the men and women who make their living from cocoa, that we can develop tailored interventions, scale up innovations, and inform regulation and policies that make a difference. Let's use the opportunity of this WCF partnership meeting to accelerate our collective action, listen and learn from each other, and co-create lasting solutions. Only by working together can we overcome the challenges facing us all. Thank you very much.
And now I'm delighted to welcome for the first time at the partnership meeting as Executive Secretary of the Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana Cocoa Initiative, Alex Asanvo. After Alex, we will hear from Yves Brahima Kone, Executive Director of the Conseil du Café Cacao, and Joseph Boahen Edu, Chief Executive of the Ghana Cocoa Board. Alex, la parole est à vous.
Oh, I thought Chris is going to speak. Okay. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today at the World Cocoa Foundation Partnership meeting, specifically on the living income. How do we overcome the challenge? So it's a very important challenge for us, a key one to be tackled. First of all, let me express my gratitude on behalf of the two countries, Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, I represent here. The Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana Cocoa Initiative was established in response to the express wish of the two heads of state to jointly work to overcome the recurrent constraints the countries are facing in the cocoa sector. The sector of cocoa is very important, an important one for Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, which support lives of many millions of people. But it's also, unfortunately, a sector that is still linked to the theme of poverty, which is not acceptable. And as we are all here today, we see that, for example, yesterday there were this meeting where on the panel, unfortunately I missed, but I could get some feedback. We all realized that there's a lot to do. But also yesterday we have also a big event. The European Union have announced a legislation on deforestation. However, if we want to overcome the challenge together. Let's be clear on the assessment. And I will highlight 3 main points. So number 1 is the distribution of value in the cocoa sector. Current data are showing a very unbalanced level of value, which is also impacting producing countries. And this is something we all know that we need to crack these elements. There are a lot of discussions. However, we need to ensure that we are all aligned on how do we realize a sustainable cocoa sector, on the clear objectives together. We need to align on the objectives. Secondly, we all agree that living income is a necessary precondition for more sustainable cocoa production. And there seems to be also a consensus that price are a key element to improve farmer income. But while the price of cocoa is not the only one, it's a very important one, but also a very important one for the countries I represent here. The 3 challenges from our perspectives, child labor, deforestation, and living income, are interlinked. We can't crack one without the others. And for us, achieving living income will help delivering the other output. And last point, the debate today and the recent weeks and months have been too centered on how do we achieve sustainable cocoa production, but not on how to make sure the producer, the farmer, have the necessary resources to achieve it. We need to explore together how the market can generate more income for the farmer. An important enabling element missing so far in any and most of the discussions. As we all know, cocoa is a future market. And this is something we need to explore, really, how the market of today can deliver this. So within this context, I wanted to share a few reflections. So what is the true cost of cocoa? It's clear to all of us that cocoa haven't been sold or paid at this cost of production. But today we have a new value, sustainability, and sustainability has a price. We also have recently and specifically from the producer country realized that buying, selling, trading, and hedging of cocoa as a commodity that has been done until now is not possible. The cocoa trade cannot be subjected to only supply and demand and be designed only to deliver cheap cocoa, especially in the current environment. We need to explore further. And we also have seen that Côte d'Ivoire, since we launched the LID, we have observed that actors and players have been not always on the same page. Some paid, some do, but we have observed different tools being developed to overcome the LID. So we hope that we'll get back to this because we don't want countries to be penalized by doing the right thing. We need a level playing field. So in conclusion, this is time from assessment to actions. We should focus on the objectives we will align together that need to pursue the realization of a sustainable cocoa. There is a need to reset the dialogue. We need together to work toward a new pact and roadmap on living income. And this is very critical and has to be between the countries, so the government, the importing countries, and the industry. Ghana Côte d'Ivoire Cocoa Initiative stay available. We have been ahead of the game. We created this institution and we want to be the one helping these discussions, and we are willing and welcome everyone to go back to the center on this. Thank you very much. Hello? So I was short because I want to give the opportunity for the countries to explain further, and I will introduce the next speaker, le directeur général du Conseil Café Cacao, Monsieur Koné, qui va donner beaucoup de précisions plus sur le Living Income Differential et les actions de la Côte d'Ivoire envers la durabilité. Merci
I'm
beaucoup.
going to introduce the Director of Sustainability, Mr. Kone.
Allô? Le Conseil Café Cacao?
Oui, Alex.
Oh, okay. English.
Allô?
Oui.
Hello?
Le DG n'est pas disponible.
La parole est donnée au...
We're giving the floor to...
Présentement. Donc, Sylvie Aljo peut parler avant.
He is not currently present, so we're going to give the floor to someone else.
Okay. So the director general of Conseil Café Cacao has an urgent call. I will suggest Mr. Aidu, Honorable Aidu, Chief Executive of Cocoa Board, to take the floor. Chief Executive, please.
Je vais donc passer au PDG du Conseil de cacao. Je prends.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Our fraternal greetings to the membership of the World Cocoa Foundation. Special greetings to Mr. Shodas, the new president of the World Cocoa Foundation, and to all the membership of this important partnership platform. My greetings to our friends in Côte d'Ivoire. You can see you over there, and greetings to everybody. Well, the COVID pandemic has actually changed the mode of meetings of World Cocoa Foundation. How often we meet face to face and then interact. And now COVID has changed everything. COVID has actually turned the world upside down. So we are forced to do things in very unusual ways. So we have no other option but to go by virtual. And on this note, let me thank World Cocoa Foundation for giving Ghana the opportunity to share some views about what is happening within the sector. Foremost, let us remind ourselves about the collective responsibility that is before all of us to ensure a thriving and sustainable cocoa production in the world. And this is hinged on three key pillars. The issue of producing cocoa such a way that is devoid of human abuse, most particularly issues relating to child labor, and then exposure of children to hazardous activities. And then it's also hinged on the pillar of ensuring a very healthy and then an integrated environment. So the question of deforestation comes into mind, that it is our collective responsibility to ensure that we produce cocoa with less effect, on deforestation. And then the third pillar, which is also very critical, has to do with the question of remuneration. That is, if the farmers are to continue to sustain the supply chain, then they must be remunerated, for their labor. So on the score of these three pillars, I want to make my submission. The first has to do with there's the ethical issues of child labor and all those elements involved. We want to assure the industry that we in this sub-region are doing our utmost to ensure that the cocoa we produce from the West African, sub-region is devoid of any human abuse or mistreatment of human persons, particularly with regards to children. But I've quite often also indicated that we need to redefine some of the concepts and then definitions of the various elements that we see, within this particular context of child labor as against child work. We really have to redefine what constitutes child labor as against child work. We also have to appreciate the cultural values, the socio-cultural values within which we are looking at this particular subject. But there are certain things which children in the Western world may not do. But when you come to the West African region, our cultural values permit. So there are certain permissible activities which are part of our socialization process. I've often said that if we want our children in Ghana, in Cote d'Ivoire, to wait until they become 18 years before going to the cocoa farm, it's not likely, for us to have the next generation of cocoa farmers. There's no way Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire can have the next generation of cocoa farmers if our children have to wait until they attain the age of 18. Because through the socialization process, our children will have to follow their parents to the farm to know, to learn how even cocoa is cultivated. That does not mean that they are being used or being abused on the farm. That is part of our socialization process. And I believe that it's not only exclusive to Ghana. I want to believe that when you go to even the developed world, you go to America, you go to Europe, you go to Asia, you have children who accompany their parents to the farm. We know of children who are trained to drive tractors, on farms. You know of children, who follow their parents to the apple farms. It doesn't mean that they are being, exploited or abused. That is not the essence. And we really have to look at the various elements that are used to define child labor as against child work. And then the processes of socialization, which is very critical when we come to discuss the question of child labor, that ethical issues relating to, the cocoa industry, the supply chain. Nobody can actually convince me that the milk that is produced in Holland, when you go to dairy farms, you will not see any child on any dairy farm. Of course, you have children on these farms following their parents, but that does not amount to child labor. In much the same way, you find children following their parents, to cocoa farms to see how even cocoa, behaves, the cocoa plant. But you need to understand how the plant behaves for you to actually learn the secrets of the cocoa. And for Ghana, for example, for us to produce premium cocoa with the best fermentation and then the best aroma, you need to learn the secrets of this particular plant. And you can only do that when you are young. You don't wait until you are 18. When you are 18 in Ghana, most people who are more than 18 have no interest in going to cocoa farming. And we must take note that in Ghana, for example, the average age of a farmer is 55 years. So when you have people of my age, 60, 64, 65 years, and then, we cannot let our children who are 60 years to follow us to the farm to go and learn what is happening there I'm afraid that the industry one day will collapse, because there will be nobody to produce cocoa, unless maybe we are looking for artificial, recipe to be introduced into cocoa, as is happening in the market at the moment. But if truly we want to have cocoa, that organic, recipe to be, used for the production of chocolates and cocoa-related products, then it's important that we redefine the concept of child labor as against child work and all the elements of socialization. Now, let me move us to the issue of deforestation. That is the other pillar. Here again, I must say that we have to have a common standard. We don't have to have double standard in the way we look at this matter. In particular, sometimes I find it difficult to appreciate that within the industry, some players are indicating that we should have supply management of, cocoa. But at the same time, the same players are going around looking for land to do plantations, to establish plantations. We are aware of major players within, the supply chain who are moving to continents to go and establish cocoa plantations. And we all know that you cannot establish a plantation without cutting forests. So if those of us in West Africa have been advised to go against deforestation, why would the same, players look for land elsewhere, not in Africa, but on other planets, other continents, to go and then establish plantations? Plantations for what? To produce cocoa? I think that is double standard in that sense. And for me, that hypocrisy ought to be stopped, because we cannot sit here in West Africa to be told, and in Ghana, we are putting every measure in place to ensure that we do not do expansion of cocoa. We are now doing what we call vertical productivity. We want to ensure that we have the optimal yield from the small piece of land. If the land is 1 hectare, and previously our farmers were getting 450 kilos per hectare. But as we speak today, we've put our farmers to 1,000 kilos per hectare. And that's what we want to do. We want our farmers to move from 1,000, from the 450 to about 2,000 kilos, and then 2,500 kilos per hectare. The same piece of land. But whilst we are trying to do that, we have major players within the industry who are looking for land elsewhere to undertake cocoa plantation. That's double standard. And I think WCF has a major role to play here, because this is not happening outside WCF. It's happening, it's taking place among the membership of WCF. And here I will urge, the leadership of the WCF, because if we say that we shouldn't cause any deforestation, then it amounts to not even clearing any new forest. I've always said that every country that has gone through agriculture of some form is guilty of deforestation, because you cannot cut, you cannot cultivate, you cannot do agriculture, you cannot even do dairy farming. You cannot do food cropping. You cannot do tree cropping without first cutting the primary forest.
Mr. Edu, I want to just thank, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I want to thank you so much for your really important comments here. We do need to move on to our next speaker, but I want to thank you so much,
Mr. Edu. How many minutes did you give me?
It's been about 12, Mr. Edu. So
maybe usually when you are giving me time, I think you have to consider the way I speak, because 10 minutes, 15 minutes, normally will not.
And we are so.
I'm still in the air, and anyway, I'll take your caution, because otherwise I have to crash land, and I don't want to crash land, because I still have a number of issues that I would have wished to talk about, because I've been spoken about the living income differential. But of course, I think the message is very, very clear that we ought to avoid double standards. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adu. I really, really appreciate your comments. I always really enjoy listening to you speak, and I look forward to our next opportunity for that. So thank you. And I will now like to welcome to the floor Michel Arion, Executive Director of the International Cocoa Organization. Michel, la parole est à vous.
Thank you very much, and good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for having me with you. I've been given the task to say a few words on supply management, and I must say it's not the easiest task. And I want to make clear from the onset that we have no agreed line about supply management within ICCO. We have just starting the work through a working group. So what I'm going to say this morning or this afternoon is really personal views. I will start a short presentation. Here we are. Okay. Thank you. I will start with a few statistics I would like to share with you. And the first one is a graph that many of you may know, because I'm starting all my presentation with this graph. It shows you 50 years of production and grindings of cocoa since 1970. So production and grindings are precisely supply and demand. One important thing that you may see by looking at this graph is that during that period of 50 years, at 30 occasions, so 30 years, 60% of the time, we had surpluses. So we have the blue line above the orange line. And that's really a structural issue for the cocoa sector. If you look at the last 5 years, many of you, I'm sure, will remember the crisis that we went through in 2000.
Can we cut him off? It's likely.
I was referring to the crisis we went through in 2016. You see the red square on the left. That was a surplus of more than 300,000 tons in 2016. That had an immediate effect on the prices. You see below the black line, where the prices went from 3,300 to about 2,200. So we have lost 30% of value of cocoa. If we look now at the world production in the last 5 years, we see that we have gone from a bit less than 4 million tons, 3.9, to more than 5 million. So we had 1,147,000 tons of additional production in the last 5 years. And this additional production came mainly from Africa. About 92% was coming from Africa, 18% from America, the Americas, mainly Central and Latin and South America, and minus 10% from Asia. So that means that actually the situation would have been even worse if Asia, in particular Indonesia, had maintained their production at their level of 5 years ago. If we look more in details with regard to Africa, the biggest part of this additional production comes from Côte d'Ivoire, that went from 1.5 million tons to 2.2, about 600,000 tons more in 5 years. Also Ghana, with an important increase in production from 778,000 to a bit more than 1 million tons. Cameroon and Nigeria play a less important role in terms of production, with respectively 70 and 79,000 tons of additional production in the last 5 years. If we look at Latin America, I would say Ecuador is certainly the main player and the main contributor to the additional production, with a production going from 232,000 tons to 350. The same with Peru, 50% more in 5 years, but with relative small amounts in volumes. The rest of America is also growing. I forgot to mention in the previous slide, the rest of Africa is not increasing at all. And if we look at Asia, Asia is Indonesia only, with Indonesia going from 300 to 200,000 tons. So that is how I think it's important to set the scene. If we want to discuss, if we want to complain about the level of international prices, clearly it has an economic reason for that, and that is this mismatch between supply and demand. So I think that the response of the community, the cocoa community, is to act on both sides of the equations, on the demand and on the supply. So the subject of today is to discuss on supply and supply management, but I want to highlight that it's equally important to work on the generic promotion of consumption in order to boost the demand of cocoa. And as we know, the European and the American markets are saturated, so we have to find new markets and new products. But let's go back to supply management. When we mention supply management, clearly we have in mind quotas. So should quotas be set? Should quotas be established to limit the production or the exportation of quotas? So the first question I'd like to mention is, are we going to consider production quotas or exportation quotas? This is very different. If we're talking about production quotas, actually it means that we are looking at a system where we would be freezing or reducing the surfaces, the areas of cultivated land. And it has a big advantage to put quotas on production, because if we achieve the results that we are intending to achieve, that is an increase of the prices, well, an increase of price will not incentivize producers to produce more, because they will have quotas of production. Unfortunately, this solution probably is not feasible, because there are millions of small farmers. There are also other issues like land tenure, etc. But to summarize, the monitoring and the implementation mechanism of such a production quota will be extremely expensive. So we should rather probably look at exportation quotas. The big advantage of an export quotas is that it's easily implementable, because there are just a few exporters and very few exporting points, very few ports. So you can put in place your monitoring at the point of exportation with a few actors. The problem with export quotas is that if you achieve your results, if prices increase, then you incentivize people to produce more and more. And you are back to square one, because more production means declining prices. So clearly the export quotas are difficult to put in place. There are other challenges I'd like to mention rapidly. The first one is one size does not fit all. I mean, the farming system of cocoa in Côte d'Ivoire is very different from Ecuador. The average size of plantation, for instance, or the productivity. A second element to take into consideration is the variable importance of the cocoa sector in countries like, let's take Ghana. It's a strategic commodity. It's a strategic source of income for the state. It's a strategic source of income for the population. If you address this issue in Nigeria, well, cocoa is a drop in the ocean of crude oil of Nigeria, so it's very different. And of course, there are different business environments. So, as I said, we are just at the beginning of our reflections within ICCO. We have asked a working group to start working on that. And the Secretariat has offered a reflection paper to the working group that would be based on export quotas with the following elements. First of all, I think it's important to address the question of voluntary versus compulsory or obligatory. We believe that there is no need for legally binding instruments. We believe that an agreement or even a unilateral commitment from a very few players would be sufficient. We are talking about 5 or 6 producing countries maximum. The export quotas should be agreed upon among the stakeholders, among countries, and then each country would be responsible to allocate, to distribute the quota to its own exporters, country by country. As I said, there is always a risk of overproduction, even more so if we are successful in increasing the prices. So necessarily you will be building stocks. And those stocks will have to be stored. First of all, the beans will have to be purchased, will have to be bought, either by the regulatory agency or by the private sector, and will have to be kept. And we will have to pay the farmers for producing their beans. So there will be necessarily a certain guaranteed minimum farm gate price for the farmer, even for those production exceeding the quotas.
Michel, I'm so sorry once again. I apologize to you. We are really, really grateful for your remarks. Unfortunately, we are on a tight schedule today, so I do need to interrupt you. And I am very pleased to say that we've created a few more minutes in the schedule to welcome back Mr. Edu from Ghana Cocoa Board. It is a pleasure to have you back. And once again, thank you so much to Michel Arion for your comments. Mr. Edu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I think, you know, there's no need for me to comment on anybody's presentation, but it's important that we take note of what Mr. Arion had indicated, because I've heard him make presentations about quotas and orders. Honestly, I had been a protagonist, you know, against this whole idea of supply management, because it's going to be difficult. I've always said that cocoa is a biological crop, and the production is not like maybe producing automobiles. If you are producing cars or if you are producing cell phones, you can easily instruct your production line to stop. You know, but cocoa is different. This is a biological plant. Once the flowers come and, you know, the fruits are coming, you cannot go to the farm and then tell the trees that, hey, stop, because the world is saturated with cocoa, and therefore the world is telling you that consumption is not ready, and therefore wait until the time when supply will be available before you fruit. You cannot do that to cocoa trees. We are talking about a biological crop. And here farmers, you know, expend investment, energy, and effort into it. So when you want to control production of a biological crop and something which is not, you know, controllable, it becomes very, very, very difficult. So for me, I think that issue is an issue which, well, is subject to debate. And, you know, I don't know where this is coming from, whether it's coming to ICC for us to debate or anything of that sort. But then, back to the third pillar, which I was going to talk about before the break. It has to do with the remuneration for farmers. We all know the farmer is a fulcrum. The fulcrum of the entire value chain, the supply chain. Without the farmer, there will be no chocolate. And so it's important that we focus on the farmer and ensure that the farmer was producing in a very responsible manner, also gets, you know, a decent remuneration. But as we know, the farmers are not well paid. Now, from you know, Aaron's presentation, we know price of cocoa fell from 2016 around $3,000 plus and come down around $2,000. Already, we've lost you know, 30%, and we are even afraid that because of COVID, prices are likely to fall even further down. Now, in Ghana, the government and Cocoa Board has to subsidize to be able to sustain the farmers in this industry. For how long are we going to subsidize? You know, in Cote d'Ivoire, they've been heavily affected because they don't have the mechanism that we operate in Ghana. In Ghana, we operate a mechanism that's called, you know, a guaranteed price for the farmer. And with that guaranteed price for the farmer, minimum guarantee, you cannot reduce the producer price of the farmer. And as the world market price fall, you cannot reduce the farmer's price. It means that we have to find money to subsidize. You know, more or less, we are subsidizing for, you know, the big processors, the chocolate companies. And I think it's wrong. That's why we introduced the living income differential as a way, because the living income differential is universal. It's universal so that it will touch on every farmer that is producing cocoa, irrespective of the size or the volume of production, will benefit. But today, what do we see in the market? The players, the buyers pay the LID $400, all right, and you know, it's receipted. They collect receipt, which they can show to the whole world that yes, we are paying. But then behind the scenes, the country differentials, the origins have been discounted. They've been heavily discounted to the extent that the origin differential have been discounted by £300. Now, when you discount differentials, premium differentials, that's when you discount them by £300, what it amounts to is that you are taking away the $400 LID. So in one breath, you are paying with your right hand, which is forward, showing to the whole world that yes, we are paying. But behind the scenes, your left hand is collecting it, you know, through the country differential. And there's something which I think is an issue that WCF will have to sit down with the two countries for us to look at this matter critically, because honestly, it's affecting the industry, especially at this time when you have COVID. And we know in Cote d'Ivoire, recently there have been some, you know, unrest from cocoa farming, all because of the way prices are going down. But we need to sustain our farmers. As I've indicated, without them, there is no way. There's no way that we can have a sustainable cocoa production. We are looking for a responsible, sustainable cocoa production from our farmers, the smallholder farmers. If we are doing all these things, it comes at a cost. And for which reason, the farmer must also be remunerated. I've seen that my time is up. So I want to thank all of you for your attention and then for the opportunity to talk. My time is up, and I want to thank all of you for this opportunity once again.
Mr. Edu, thank you so much. As I said, it is always a pleasure to hear you speak, and thank you very much for your concluding comments. I know I appreciate it, and I'm sure all of our audience does as well. Thank you also to Michel Arion. And this concludes our session. We're going to move now into a session on EU due diligence. We will have keynote speeches followed by a panel.